Hola chicos, espero que estén bien. Back for more subjunctive fun. All right. Hoy vamos a ver las oraciones subordinadas adverbiales. So looking at those adverb clauses. And this is the only part that we did not actually get to in class. The other two we went over a little bit. But this is newish. Okay. So we've seen the three types, right? Noun clauses because they're sitting in a noun spot. And adjective clauses, which are called adjective clauses because they're sitting in an adjective spot, which means they're describing a noun. And the last type of clauses are adverb clauses. And that means that the whole clause is sitting in an adverb space in the full sentence, right? So that means it's modifying a verb. So if you have a sentence like fui al supermercado ayer, I went to the grocery store yesterday, you could replace that ayer, which is modifying when you went, right? You could replace that with the sentence that also describes when you went. So fui al supermercado antes de que cerrara. I went to the grocery store before it closed. And now before it closed is your time condition modifying your verb here. So it's functioning as an adverb. All right. And as we've said, why does this matter? Why do you have to know what kind of subordinate clause it is? That is really the only way to know if it's indicative or subjunctive. If you try to take the rules for noun clauses and apply them to adjective clauses or adverb clauses, you're going to be very confused, just like I was, because I did not know there were adjective or adverb clauses. And so I was quite confused. I didn't know how this worked. All right. So same as noun clauses and adjective clauses, the indicative subjunctive is used based on whether the description of the verb is hypothetical or real. In the present tense, and this is a general rule, many adverb clauses can be either indicative or subjunctive, but the meaning will change. In the past tense, this is not always true, but a lot of time it will be indicative, right? Because if it's past, then it means it happened. So, ejemplos, voy a hacer la tarea como me dice la profesora. So I'm doing the homework like the teacher is telling me. And so that means that the teacher is giving specific instructions and you know what those instructions are. So that's concrete and known. Versus, voy a hacer la tarea como me diga la profesora. And that is like saying, I'm going to do the homework however the teacher tells me to. So I don't have specific instructions yet at this point, but when I do get them, then that's how I'm going to do the homework. All right. So you can divide this, and again, this is not like official Spanish. This is just a way to help you think about how do you decide if it's indicative or subjunctive. So these are some of the functions of a subordinate adverb clause, right? So it can be telling you manera, modo, how the action is being done. Lugar is place, so where is the action being done. Temporal is time, when is the action being done. Final, for what end is the action being done? And the best way to think about it is that so that, right? So I work so that I can earn money. Causal, why is the action being done? It's asking for a cause. And then condicional, conditions, under what conditions is the action of the verb being done? And concesiva is probably the hardest one to describe, but it's in spite of what is the action of the verb being done. There's some sort of difficulty in a concessive clause, and we'll see what that looks like in just a minute. Okay, so then, is it indicative or is it subjunctive? Causals are always indicative, right? Because if you're saying because XYZ, that means that your reason is real, so it has to be indicative. Final is always subjunctive, because if you're saying I'm doing this so that XYZ happens, that's so that you don't know that that's going to happen, right? That's always going to be a hypothetical. Conditional, generally subjunctive, except for if clauses, C clauses, which have their own set of rules. And I have another handout, and there'll be a separate video on if clauses. It's very prescriptive, right? There's a very specific set of rules. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. Another video. All right, and then these four, manera, modo, lugar, temporal, concesiva, can be either indicative or subjunctive, depending on whether the description of the action is real or defined, or hypothetical or undefined. And we'll see, what does that look like in just a minute. Connecting words. So some of the connecting words you might expect to see for these, and again, not a complete list, but Manera, modo is telling you how. So como is how or as. Igual que is same as. Sin que means without. Según is according to. Conforme is basically like according to. Lugar, you'll notice all of them have donde in them somewhere. Okay, so the where. So where to where, until where, through where. Anything if it has donde in it, it's a place. It's a place adverbial. Temporal, any kind of time expression at the beginning of the phrase. So when, while, as soon as, before, after, until. Apenas means barely, but in this context, it's like as soon as. It's another way of saying as soon as. Tan pronto como is another way of saying as soon as, and luego que is, it's like after. Not 100% sure on that one. Final, because some of these, luego is later, and que is that. So these don't translate literally most of the time. So final is final. So para que, so that, a fin de que, with the end that, con el fin de que is also with the end that, a que is another way of saying so that. So basically these are all saying so that. Causal, these are all synonyms for because. So porque, because, pues is like so, puesto que is given that, dado que is given that, por is kind of like because, not quite. Ya que is also because, but it can start a sentence. Porque can't start a sentence. A causa de que, because of. En vista de que, in view of. But basically, there's all different ways to say because. Okay. Condicional, si is if. Siempre que is provided that, more or less. And then en caso de que is in case of. And then concesiva, aunque is although or even if. Por más que. It's very hard to translate. I know how to use it in what context, but it's like for as much as, in the sense of like, for as much as she complains about this, blah, blah. Anyway, that's the context where you use por más que. A pesar de que, in spite of, and si bien means although. Doesn't look like it means although because it's if well, but it means although. Okay, so let's look at indicative and subjunctive. Okay, manera, modo. Remember, it can be either one. Nos pagarán según lo que trabajemos. They will pay us according to how much we work. Okay, so this could be either indicative or subjunctive because you could say they will pay us according to what we worked, or according to what we work, and it's a hypothetical, right? So we haven't worked yet. This just we'll get paid based on how much we work. So you can use either the indicative or the subjunctive, but it changes the reality of the situation. If it's indicative, that means we know how much we're working. If it's subjunctive, we don't know how much we're working, but we know we'll get paid for however much we work. Okay, lo hice como me dijo. I did it as he or she told me. So como me dijo is indicative because I did it. And again, a lot of these, if they're past tense, not always, then it's going to be indicative because if it's in the past, that means it's real, it's concrete, so it happened. All right. So lo hice como me dijo. Me dijo. All right. Lugar, place, same thing. Te espero donde ya sabes. I'm waiting for you where you already know. And so if you know where it is, then it's concrete. You're using indicative. Encontraremos a Raúl donde esté el carro. We will find Raúl donde esté el carro, wherever the car is. So donde esté is subjunctive because we were saying we don't necessarily know where the car is, but we know wherever the car is, that's where we'll find Raúl. We could also use the indicative there, donde está el carro, if we know where the car is. So we'll find Raúl where the car is. And if you use está, that means that you know where the car is. If you use esté, it means you don't know where the car is. Okay, temporal, time. Estaremos felices cuando podamos salir de nuestras casas. COVID-19 example. We will be happy when we can leave our houses. Okay. Podamos, because you're saying we will be happy when we can do this. But right now, that's not a reality. So we use the subjunctive. And this is one I think I've told you before. But this structure is one that I got wrong all the time when I was in Costa Rica. I used to say, when I go back, when I return to the US, and I would say cuando regreso, when I return. That's right. And my host mother would correct me and say cuando regrese, and I'm like, I don't understand why you're telling me to say cuando regrese. And it's because at that particular point in time, that's it's not real at that point in time. When I go back to the United States, I'm going to drink lots of Coke. Or whatever. There was Coke in Costa Rica. That's not a good example. But that at that point, that cuando regrese a Estados Unidos was in the future, so it's hypothetical. Okay. And same thing, if it's in the past, usually, not always, but usually it's going to be indicative, because you're saying, estábamos felices, we were happy, cuando podíamos salir de nuestras casas, when we were able to leave our houses. Because if it's in the past, and you're saying we were happy when, blah, 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 then that means it's real, and you use the indicative. All right, final. These are always subjunctive, because it's always so that. You don't know if that so that condition is going to be completed or not. So, los padres trabajan para que sus hijos tengan una buena vida, so that their kids have a good life. Subjunctive. Causal, the opposite. So it's always indicative, because if one thing causes another thing, that means that it's real. So you're going to use indicative. And then condicional. Most of the conditionals are going to be subjunctive, because if it's conditional, that indicates that it's hypothetical. I've talked a little bit about if clauses, that they're weird animals and they have their own set of rules. And so I will have a separate video on those. But the rest of the conditionals are going to be subjunctive. So, llevamos un paraguas en caso de que llueva. So we will take an umbrella in case it rains. Or we're taking an umbrella in case it rains. And then concessives, you can look at that and see my example. They can be either indicative or subjunctive, because it's like the reality of the difficulty or not. So, aunque llueve, vamos a hacer un picnic. Vamos a hacer un picnic. Even though it's raining, that means it's a real thing. It's actually raining. If you say aunque llueve, because you're saying the indicative means that it is raining. So even though it's raining, we're going to have a picnic. Versus B, aunque llueva, vamos a hacer un picnic. That's even if. So aunque with indicative is even though. Aunque with subjunctive is even if. And that's true for all the connectors with the concessives. It's even though versus even if. Okay, hopefully that helps. There's a summary of this, the information in this video right here. And then I have a handout on if clauses here. I will also have another video on that at some point in the future, soonish, okay? So that's adverb clauses. Have fun doing your Blackboard homework.